Hello, everybody. This is Rabbi Akiva coming back with a super powerful episode of Sharing by the Sea. Today, we're going to talk about the most righteous woman that has ever lived. In my opinion, probably has the most palatial section of Olam Haba of any woman in Jewish history. And I ain't going to tell you who it is. You're going to have to watch a little bit more before I reveal who it is. I'm going to fish you into this one. I'm just kidding. This is the wife of Rabbi Akiva. Okay? We're going to talk about the wife of Rabbi Akiva in this lecture. Some of the things you might know, I can guarantee you that a lot of this that you do not know. I don't care what level of observance you're on. My goal with all my lectures is to literally blow people's minds. I spend a lot of time researching because, like I've said in my last few lectures, there's a few professions in the world where you can't have like an almost perfect success rate. You need to have a flawless pilot, brain surgeons or heart surgeons. You don't want a pilot with a 98.2% success rate. I mean, that means that one of his flights, crashed and burned, right? You don't want a heart surgeon that most of the time does his job, because the other times, someone's going to be dead on the gurney on the operating table. My assumption is that as our lectures, are growing here, as more and more people are watching my lectures, that there is always going to be new people coming in. Some of these people might be searching for something in life and they're about to just, fall off completely from Judaism, and this could, reel them back in. Or conversely, it could be someone that's religious, that's, just sort of disillusioned with how life is, and this will, sort of spurn them on to, come back and up their observance. So my goal with every lecture is to take whatever topic it is and just drop nuclear bombs so that people will see that it doesn't matter how little the section of the Torah or the Talmud that we're talking about, we could discuss these issues and topics for the rest of our lives and never scratch the surface. So this lecture is going to be focused on the wife of Rabbi Akiva, the great Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva reached a level of wisdom that even Moshe Rabbeinu did not reach. I got two amazing comments today from yesterday's lecture that I put up that was on Bikurim. I said basically that Bikurim is the reason why the world is created. And it seems like a very outlandish statement. You could say, well, Rabbi Akiva, you're very big into telling us we have to keep Shabbos, and that's the most important thing of Judaism. I've never even heard of Bikurim. Okay, so watch the lecture. Here's what I got. Mind-blowing is an understatement. This is the one that sponsored the lecture, by the way. This is genius. You had me crying at the start of around an hour 19 mark, bringing it all back to each and every one of us. Thank you for putting in so much work for Parshas Ki Savo. I never imagined that the first fruits, Bikurim, could be transformed into such an amazing lesson. I have to listen to it again and again. We'll be sharing this with everyone. This is from Chilchaya, which, I love getting the comments, but when the person that actually sponsors the lecture messages me that they were just blown away, I'm providing a service. I am giving a Torah lecture. If I was a mechanic and I was fixing someone's car, I would really be appreciative if that person said, wow, no one's ever fixed my car like this. My car's running better than ever. So this is what Malka said. I always say that my lectures are designed to blow your toupee off if you wear a toupee. Forget my toupee. You blew my mind with this year. I'm so blessed to be in the Holy Land that Hashem promised to give us along with the third temple. Wow. Okay, so this is the goal. The goal is to change the way that you see the Torah. Most of these topics you learn over and over and over again, but once, you see it from a different light, you realize how many ways you can learn every single little minute topic in the Torah. So anyone that listens to my lectures knows that I say something in every single lecture. The purpose of life, basically, is you've been given an allotment of time. You then die. I hate to break it to you, but you're going to die. God willing, it's going to be at 120. But at some point, you are going to leave this world like, everyone else in history. The goal is to go to the next world with as much of whatever the reward that the world was created for. Meaning, I think at this point, anyone that watches these lectures, or if you're watching it the first time, I hope you're not dumb enough to think that this red cup blew up randomly at a plastic factory and morphed itself into this perfectly shaped cup to hold by water. Clearly, someone created this, designed this as a specific purpose, a specific size and shape and everything. I think that we, can understand this. So I have a cup next to my head. What seems more likely? I think we're all in agreement that this cup was created by somebody. So I have a cup next to my head. What's a more likely scenario? That this cup was created by someone with a purpose and a function, but me, 190 trillion connections in the brain, 2 million things that make the eye work, a nose, a mouth, a heart. I was just created randomly and for no purpose. I would like to think that the people that are watching this lecture are not dumb enough and ignorant enough and sad enough. It's really sad that you would actually think that. So when we go to the next world, what are we judged on? When you have your year-end office review, what does your boss judge you on? Well, probably he takes out the company handbook and says, okay, Eliakim, you come in on time. That's great. You hand in your TPS reports. That's great. Number 72, we have a little bit of a, problem with, so I'm going to, dock you a little bit of credit for that. But all in all, you have a very good report. How does the boss determine my worth at the company? Well, he probably takes the company handbook, what he wants all of his employees to follow, and he basically judges me against this handbook. You go into a university. You sit in one of these, 650 person amphitheater, lessons. You're taking advanced English, whatever, at the University of, travesty. You go in, first day, teacher gives you what? Syllabus. How do you expect to excel in this class? You probably just follow the syllabus, word for word. When the teacher says, these are the 7 books that you have to read this semester, you probably go out and buy those 7 books. So what does the creator of this world want from us as Jews? He tells us specifically in the Torah. So isn't the goal to learn as much Torah, to see where we fit into this world, to see what our purpose is, what our destiny is, how we're going to be judged? How are we ultimately judged as Jews? The good things we do, they're called mitzvahs. Mitzvah does not mean good deed. People are like, oh, you held the door open for that old lady. That was such a mitzvah. It is a mitzvah, but not for the reason that you think it is. It's a mitzvah to honor the elders. It's a mitzvah to honor people that, really, they don't have the wherewithal. They're not able to. You're on the bus and you see an old lady, trying to lift her bags and she can't do it. It's a mitzvah to do that. It doesn't mean it's a good deed. Yes, it turns out that it's a good deed, but mitzvah means commandment. Hashem commands us to do 613 things. These 613 things are broken up into thousands of sub mitzvahs. And these are what we accrue to go to the next world. What is the biggest mitzvah of them all? And this is going to be very crucial for you to understand in this lecture. Because when I tell you who the wife of Rabbi Akiva is, you're going to realize that there's no one in history that gets the credit for more Torah than Rabbi Akiva's wife. The Chafetz Chaim says a minimum of 60,000 mitzvahs an hour by learning Torah. Other rabbis multiply that by other numbers and permutations and calculations to the point where you can get into the millions. When you leave this world, you bring with you nothing. Your car, your house, your jewelry, your fancy condo in Cape Cod. None of this is coming with you. The only thing that you were coming with is your Torah knowledge and your mitzvahs. And again, mitzvah is not good deed. It's the commandments. Every time you daven, every time you learn Torah, every time you give tzedakah. That's all mitzvahs. They're all commandments that you're taking. But one stands clearly head and shoulders above the rest, and that is Torah learning. If we know that Rabbi Akiva reached a level of wisdom that no one, even Moshe Rabbeinu, couldn't touch. And this is literally right in the Talmud. Isn't it safe to say that the person that made Rabbi Akiva religious, because he wasn't religious until he was 40 years old, don't you think that that person would also benefit greatly from all of Rabbi Akiva's Torah? I mean, you've heard me say for 2 years now, the person that sponsors the lecture gets the same exact credit, a lot of rabbis say more, than I do. This is proven so many times in the Torah, Talmud. It's the whole relationship of Zvulun and Yisachar. Yisachar is the older brother, yet Zvulun's listed first. Why? Zvulun engaged in commerce by the sea in the northwest part of Israel, the Akko Haifa area, and then he funded his brother learning Torah. So when Moshe is recounting the tribes, Zvulun is listed first. Rav Moshe Feinstein says, only with the sponsoring of Torah and the helping of people learn Torah does the person that sponsors or helps get the same exact reward as the one that's actually learning. No other mitzvah in Judaism is like this. And with this, let's dive in. Okay? This lecture is going to... And I mentioned this the other day. I was giving a lecture and just, for some reason, I've been wanting to do this lecture for so long. And I was talking about something, I think it may be related to Rabbi Akiva, and this popped up. And I said, if anyone wants to sponsor this, I said, I preferably like a woman, because a lot of women think that Judaism is very sexist. And, one of the first brachas we make in the morning as a man is, Shelo asani isha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Shelo asani isha. Thank you, Hashem, for not making me a woman. And women are like, oh my God, it's sexist. What are you, Muslim? No. What's the bracha for the woman? Thank you, Hashem, for creating me basically exactly how you wanted me. We all have different roles. Men have a different role and women have a different role. So I wanted a woman to potentially sponsor this, to see the beauty of what the Torah actually says about women, and not just what you hear left-wing, newspapers and stuff say about this. So I didn't realize that as soon as I said it, probably multiple people would message that they wanted to sponsor it, and that's exactly what happened. But Malka Rus is the one that sponsored this. I believe this is her 5th lecture. It's either 4 or 5. I'm almost positive that it's 5. She sponsored some on modesty. She did one on Purim. She has a very big, shaykhis to Kedusha, to holiness. Malka Rus is a convert. And when obviously she heard me say this, she said, I want to be the one that gets the mitzvah for this lecture. So this is sponsored by my dear friend Malka Rus. She says, I messaged her an hour ago, who do you want me to sponsor this for? She said, for the IDF, to be safe, and for Hashem to fight the battle in Gaza. Malka Rus is one of the few that knows how the world works. For Hashem to fight the battle in Gaza. This is weighing heavily on my mind. She says we need to trust that Hashem will make us the victor and that the world will see us as the victor and respect us. And with that, let's start this lecture. So, I want to start off by probably dropping the biggest bomb of all. That we know that Rabbi Akiva's wife was named Rachel, but that wasn't her name. This name was given to her in the Avos of Rabbi Natan, which is a medieval midrash, and no other source that Rabbi Akiva's wife appears is she named. It's either Ben Kalba Savua's daughter or Rabbi Akiva's wife. She is not at all mentioned by name in the Torah. So that alone should just be okay, I'm going to pause this. I'm going to go get my popcorn. I'm going to sit down and watch Rabbi Akiva's lecture, because that's actually really interesting. I'm telling you that according to some rabbis that I really respect, and according to just my knowledge of how the world works, I would say unequivocally that there's no one that's earned more merit than the wife of Rabbi Akiva. Yet the wife of Rabbi Akiva is not mentioned by name in the Talmud. 2 times she's mentioned in the Babylonian Talmud and 1 time in the Jerusalem Talmud. Right? There's 2 different Talmuds. The Babylonian Talmud is the more popular one, but she's mentioned 3 times. She ain't mentioned by name, right? But everyone just knows that her name is Rachel. But nowhere does it say that her name is Rachel. So again, this is the name that was given to her in like an ancient midrash that came about like in the Middle Ages, in medieval times. And none of the older sources is a name attached to this woman. And that's not rare. I thought about this morning. I scanned the entire, for people that know me, I learn basically a few things. I do my lectures, I research many topics, but if I'm sitting there just learning on my own, I learn one of like 3 things. The thing I learn the most is called Ein Yaakov. Ein Yaakov is all the Agadata from the Talmud. Basically like the famous stories and like the beauty of the Talmud, the wisdom, the teachings. So I sat there this morning, I shut my eyes, there's only 3 women in the Talmud that are mentioned as wives of, very famous rabbis that are mentioned by name. If there's more, message me and let me know. But I don't think that there are. I think that there's only 3. And I'm gonna mention, a little bit about the 3 to show that there's something that all 3 of these women have that are very similar. Rabbi Akiva's wife does not have this character trait that's extant in these other 3 women. So, of all the names in Jewish history that could be given to the wife of clearly probably the most famous rabbi. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone in the world that does not know who Rabbi Akiva is. The name that was given to her in the Avos to Rabbi Natan is Rachel. I mean, again, could have been Sarah, could have been Rivka, could have been Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah. I mean, the name that's forever attached to her, that wasn't attached to her to begin with. Again, if the Talmud wanted you to know her name, you would have known that, Rabbi Akiva's wife was named, Shenala or Medala. It's not. She is listed in any place that she is listed in any Jewish source. She's listed with no name. Been through the desert on a horse with no name. Well, Rabbi Akiva's wife has no name. Literally, she is nameless. That alone should be like, okay, Eliakim, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. I did a lot of research on this lecture. I went back and I said, that's so weird because now that I think about it, that's true. I'm like going back to all the times she's mentioned in the Talmud, and it never says Rachel. It says Rabbi Akiva's wife or Ben Kalba Savua's daughter. He was one of the richest people in Jerusalem. We're going to get to all this. You're going to be, this is a good one. Okay? So this name was attached to her, meaning she was assigned this name by a very holy person for probably a very good reason. Why was she assigned Rachel? That comes later. What's a name in Judaism? Okay, before we start the lecture, really get into the... Name represents our identity, not simply because they're convenient ways to allow us to be distinguished from one another, like I'm Eliakim, I have a friend Chaim, I have a friend Nachum, Our names define us, right? The names we were given at birth aren't accidental. And some people aren't given a name at birth, like Malka Rus. Malka Rus is a convert. So Malka Rus chose her name. And if you've ever listened to the lectures I've done on modesty that Malka Rus sponsored, you will understand why Malka Rus chose the name Malka Rus. It's her essence. She's fanatical about modesty. In both of her names is like very beautiful textual things that you can see that modesty is like her essence. The Hebrew word for soul is neshama, right? Central to that word, the middle 2 letters are shin mem. Ne-sham, Shin Mem make up the word Shem. The word for name is Shem, right? So in the word soul, the middle two letters of soul is Shem, meaning name, meaning a big part of your soul is your name. So Rabbi Akiva's wife has no name, yet the name that we all know her by. I mean, anyone that knows the story of Rabbi Akiva knows, oh yeah, Rabbi Akiva's wife, Rachel. We don't know that her name is Rachel. This name was basically like assigned to her later on, hundreds of years later. We don't know if it's her name or not. There's no proof that this was her name. But the fact that this name is attached to her is important. Okay? The Midrash teaches us that although biblical prophecy is no longer exist, there is one small area which we are still granted a glimpse of divine wisdom. It comes when we struggle to find the right name for our child. Names are a book, right? The Hebrew word for name is Shem. Shin Mem, Gematria 340. Sefer, right? Sefer is the term for book. Also has a Gematria of 340. So name and story have the same exact Gematria. Why? Because your name tells a story about you. The story of our spiritual potential as well as our life's mission. When we leave the world, when we face the heavenly court after we die, one of the first and most powerful questions they ask you is, what is your name? And did you live up to it? Okay? Do you find it odd? I mean, clearly, I would say if you poll, I always like to do the Family Feud. It's like my favorite game show. Okay, we got top 7 answers on the board. Name the most famous rabbi that ever lived. I would bet almost anything that Rabbi Akiva's name would come up as number 1. Most people know who Rabbi Akiva is, right? They might not know the backstory. We're going to get a little bit into that. But most people know of Rabbi Akiva. Most people don't know that Rabbi Akiva's wife probably is the most special woman that has ever lived. And most people would be shocked to know that she does not have a name in any place that she appears in, like the crux of Jewish text. Torah, Tanakh, and Talmud. Okay? There are 3 women that are married to very famous rabbis that are listed in the Gemara, okay, listed in the Talmud. And I'm going to read something about each of them to show you that they're all similar and clearly not the characteristic of Rabbi Akiva's wife, okay? Actually, I just thought of something, maybe why they're all similar. We'll talk about that. Okay. Again, there's women mentioned in the Talmud, but I don't know of a rabbi's wife that's mentioned other than these 3. So again, if you know of another one, message me, because I would love to, to look that up. Okay. Rabbi Akiva had a rabbi. His name was Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, the great Rabbi Eliezer. The Talmud starts with the first name of a rabbi mentioned in the Talmud is Rabbi Eliezer. He's called Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, meaning Eliezer the Great. Okay? He himself was a student of Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. Okay? He married a woman who was named Ima Shalom. Ima means mother, and Shalom means peace. Clearly, she was an extraordinary woman. She was also the sister of the Nasi of the time, basically like the head of the Jewish community at the time, whose name was Rabbi Gamliel. Okay? Ima Shalom was the sister of the powerful Rabbi Gamliel and the wife of Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus. She defended her husband when he disobeyed the wishes of his colleagues. She also challenged the tradition of giving shares of a father's estate only to his sons, and a Roman judge awarded her part of her father's estate. But then he reversed himself after the brother bribed her. It was like a trick that the brother and sister did. I'm very close with my sister, so this story in the Gemara is like fascinating to me. They wanted to show that this judge was corrupt, so they each bribed him separately. But it says specifically about her, she challenged the tradition. Okay? She was a strong personality. Okay? Number 2. And I'm going in chronological order. Okay? Bruria. A lot of people out there might know the story of Rabbi Meir. He had a very, very, very holy and special wife named Bruria. I actually have a cousin named Bruria, and she's fantastic. And she's named specifically because there's like a tradition that something very like seedy happened between Rabbi Meir and his wife. And one of the ways that we show that we don't believe this tradition is by naming, daughters Bruria. Okay, so I have a cousin named Bruria, and she's just fantastic. So who is Bruria? Bruria was a extremely, extremely righteous and holy and learned woman. She studied 300 halachas every day, which would be quite an amazing feat for any scholar. The sages frequently asked her questions. I mean, imagine the biggest rabbis coming not to talk to you, even though Rabbi Meir was the biggest rabbi of his time, and maybe ever. There's like a debate, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir. They'd come to ask Rabbi Meir's wife questions. That's how learned she was. Rabbi Yehuda actually, the famous Rabbi Yehuda, actually sided with her and recognized her authority. She was actually like a halachic, authority. There was another case where there was a dispute between Bruria and her brother. One of the greatest authorities was asked to judge the case and said, Rabbi Hananiah's daughter, Bruria, is a greater scholar than his son, meaning the sister is a greater scholar than the brother. She was known for being very sharp. Very, very sharp. She even had an argument with Rabbi Tarfon, the great Rabbi Tarfon, who was also a rabbi of Rabbi Akiva. Basically yelling at him for being too loquacious with her. So she was a strong-willed woman. Like my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother was known as being a strong-willed, and Baruch Hashem, she had an amazing family because she was she had a lot of chizuk. Number 3, Rav Nachman, not Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, Rav Nachman from the Talmud times. He had a wife named Yalta. She was a prominent figure in the Babylonian Talmud. She is known for her strong-willed personality and appears in several stories in the Talmud. Yalta is depicted as a woman who challenges social norms and even confronts rabbinic authority. Again, all 3 of the women that are named that I know of. I'm not saying I'm a rabbi and I have an encyclopedic memory, but I cannot think of another. A lot of rabbis' wives are mentioned, but not by name. I cannot think of anybody else that's mentioned other than these 3 women. Ima Shalom, Bruria, and Yalta. All 3, from what I've said, you can see that there's a link here. Strong-willed, dominant personalities, powerful women, and they're named. That there has to be something there. Maybe the fact that they're named is a negative for them. Because if I'm telling you that Rabbi Akiva, and I'm not saying anything negative about that, I'm just saying it's weird to me that all of the people that are named that I know of from the Talmud, they're all very strong-willed. They're all very tough and chazak. And their names are given. Ima Shalom, Bruria, Yalta. Something is there. Maybe I'll talk to a rabbi about this and see if my supposition is correct. Okay. Who's Rabbi Akiva's wife? This just incredible, incredible woman. She's mentioned in 3 separate sources. Okay? 2 sources in the Babylonian Talmud, and Kesubos and Nedarim, 2 different tractates, sections of the Talmud, and 2 times in the Jerusalem Talmud. And then again in the Avos of Rabbi Natan. So the first 4 times that she's mentioned in the Talmuds that preceded the Avos of Rabbi Natan by hundreds of years, she had no name. And all 4 of these stories, she has no name. Okay? All these stories they're all a little bit different, but they all have a unifying theme. And that is that she was extremely instrumental in her husband's rise to prominence. Rabbi Akiva began his life as a pauper. He was a total ignoramus. Okay? He ended up becoming the biggest rabbi ever. It achieved the highest level of wisdom of any rabbi, including Moshe Rabbeinu. And he was very honest about his wife's part in all of this. Okay. So let's dive in. Before we talk about that, Rachel, is the name given to the wife of Rabbi Akiva and the Avos to Rabbi Natan, a medieval Aggadic text. Though she is unnamed, she appears across rabbinic literature, including the Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmuds, like I just said. The story differs in each version, yet all agree she plays a critical role in her husband's rise to prominence through great personal sacrifice. Remember that, please, okay? Put that little feather in your cap or jot it down or, do a little Siri, great personal sacrifice. Remember this, for later on in the lecture. The Jerusalem Talmud depicts her as selling her hair to support her husband's Torah learning. The Babylonian Talmud describes her as living alone and in poverty so that her husband can learn. All of the stories about Rachel end with Rabbi Akiva rewarding her with a lavish gift. Okay? Now, let's talk about the stories. These are really just awesome. Okay. We're going to start with the Babylonian Talmud, because that always takes precedence over the Jerusalem Talmud. And you'll say, wait, Babylonia is in Iraq, so why would that? The Babylonian Talmud takes precedence over the Jerusalem Talmud. Okay? When Mashiach comes, it'll be the reverse. Amir Hashem. The Gemara relates that when Rabbi Akiva married the daughter of the wealthy Kalba Savua, again, see, it does not say her name. Kalba Savua made a neder. He made a vow prohibiting his daughter from benefiting from his property. Having nothing, they slept in a straw shed. Rabbi Akiva would pick straw from her hair and tell her, if I had the means, I would place a Jerusalem of gold like a pendant upon you. Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, appeared to them as a pauper, asking for straw for his wife who had just given birth. Eliyahu Navi came in the guise of a poor person and said, my wife just gave birth, she doesn't even have straw, right? So Rabbi Akiva took this as a sign that, honey, we might be poor and desolate and destitute and broke, but at least we have straw. This guy doesn't even have straw. Eliyahu Navi says, give me a bit of my straw, as my wife has just given birth, and I don't have anything upon which to lay her. Rabbi Akiva observed to his wife that there were those who were even less fortunate than they were. Okay? And again, all the sources know that her husband rewarded her for her troubles with a glamorous headdress, usually identified as a golden city or a golden Jerusalem. Okay? Before we get to the stories. In one of the versions of Rabbi Akiva's studies are presented as a condition that without the fulfillment, the marriage wouldn't take place. This is in Kesuvos, right? We know that Rabbi Akiva went off for 12 years. He comes back. He hears his wife say something. He goes off for another 12 years. So according to the version in Kesuvos, his wife said, I will marry you, but you have to go out and learn first. In the Gemara in the Darim, they got married first, then they lived poor, in the straw, whatever, and then he goes out for his studies. It's two separate stories. The crux of the story is the same, just the beginning of the story is a little bit different. What was the point of this, according to... One should conclude that the Babylonian Talmud story is legendary. It was composed for didactic purposes, primarily in order to justify the husbands in Babylonia leaving their wives at home for protracted periods of time in order to learn Torah. Okay. Now, let's go to the Babylonian Talmud, so you can actually hear the story word for word. This is in Nedarim 50a, okay? Rabbi Akiva was not one of the fortunate ones who were born to riches or into a house of a scholar. He had to get everything the hard way. He was born as the child of a very poor family and became an ignorant shepherd. Rabbi Akiva was an ignoramus, admittedly. He says this later. We'll talk about that. He took care of thousands of flocks of the wealthy Kalba Savua. This isn't in the Dari, I'm just saying. This is like a little bit of a backstory. Whose riches were legendary, according to the Talmud. The daughter of this fabulously wealthy man was a beautiful and God-fearing girl. This is who would become the wife of Rabbi Akiva, who we know as Rachel. The richest and most learned men of that time would have considered themselves very fortunate to marry her. She was like the queen of the times. Beautiful, righteous, father's extremely wealthy. This is a unicorn, right? Anyone would be lucky to marry this girl. The father probably turned down thousands of different top-level guys. But Rachel, again, name given later on, Kalba Savua's only child, the heir to all of his riches, had observed that this shepherd, Rabbi Akiva, had a beautiful soul. He had like a spiritual inner voice. She foresaw him being a great scholar. She saw such beautiful character traits in him that all he needed was just a little bit of a push. On the condition that he would leave her father's work to go and study Torah, she married him secretly. So according to this version, and we're going to read it, he married her before he went to learn. The other opinion is that he went to learn, came back, and then married her. Either one, these are just sort of semantic. They're important, obviously, because it's in the Talmud. But they're semantics. What you need to learn from this story is one of the top 3 richest people of the time had an only child who was a beautiful girl and so righteous. She sees, it's like a Disney movie. She sees like the poor, lowly servant that's just something about him. She sees something just magical in this guy. And she risks everything. And she loses everything for him. What was so unusual that Rabbi Akiva would agree to go and become a rabbi? Well, if you knew anything about who Rabbi Akiva admitted that he was before he learned Torah, this is what he says. It was taught in a Brisa. Rabbi Akiva said, when I was an ignoramus, he admits this. When I was an ignoramus, I said, who will give me a Torah scholar so that I will bite him like a donkey? A donkey has a bite that breaks bones. His students were stunned. This is the great Rabbi Akiva. He says, I wish in my olden days that when I had it, like I could see a Torah scholar, I wish I could bite them with a donkey bite. His students were stunned. They said to him, Master, say that you would bite him like a dog. He says, no, I specifically use this wording as a donkey because the donkey bites and breaks bones. This is how much I hated the Torah scholars. This is in Pesachim 49b. So again, what we know of this woman is that she somehow got him to go learn Torah. Whether it was before they got married or after is irrelevant. Rabbi Akiva listens to his wife. He goes and learns Torah. That in and of itself should probably show how much he wanted to marry this woman. He used to hate the rabbis so much that he literally said, I wish I could bite them like a donkey bite. Breaking bones. Okay? Now, Rachel, again, not her name that we know of yet. Rachel refused one young man after another. Kalba Savua found out about her secret marriage to his former shepherd. He was furious. He vowed. Vows have long-term meaning. Whenever you vow something, you have to do it. It's, that's now the reality of your life. You can't just say, I didn't mean it. If you want to annul your vow, you have to go get it annulled. He was very angry. He vowed he would have nothing to do with his daughter or her new husband. Gladly, the only child of the richest man of those days left all of the luxuries and comforts to what she had been used to and lived with Rabbi Akiva in a shack, sleeping on a bundle of straw and working hard with her own soft hands so that her husband could devote himself to the study of Torah. Once when she could not find work, she even cut off her beautiful long hair to sell it so that she would have some money with which to buy a crust of bread for them both. Again, this is one of the wealthiest men in all of Israel, one of the top 3 wealthiest men. Imagine how this daughter grew up, if you ever watched the show 90210, you know that Tori Spelling grew up in the Spelling Mansion. It's like the biggest mansion in California. And then, when her father died, the mom didn't like her and just basically cut her out of the will. So she's been very poor ever since. So she grew up like a billionaire's daughter, but now she's always struggling with money. Imagine how hard that is. It's gotta be hard. Yet even in their poverty, they were willing to share with others the little that they possessed. Again, Eliyahu comes one time, passed by the shack, and begs, "Let me have a handful of straw. My wife is sick. She just gave birth. I have nothing to bed her on." At once, Rabbi Akiva and his wife shared the bundle of straw with the poor man. He then said to his wife, see my child? There are those that fare even worse than us." The poor beggar, as the sages say, was none other than Eliyahu Hanavi. She literally went from the penthouse to the outhouse for one reason only. She saw something in this man named Rabbi Akiva, and she knew it could only be actualized and fulfilled and gained through the Torah. So she says, go learn Torah. After Rabbi Akiva had mastered the knowledge of the Torah, his wife and he agreed he would go to yeshiva and learn under Rabbi Eliezer, the one who I just said before, his wife was Ima Shama, and devote 12 years of intensive study. 12 years. Imagine what you were doing 12 years ago. Imagine everything that's elapsed in the last 12 years. Imagine all the things that you've done with a friend or a child or a husband that you would miss out on if that person was gone for 12 years. Thus the two parted ways, and for 12 long years, Rachel slaved hard to support herself. Again, she didn't have her father's money anymore. She lived in destitution, basically. She was very poor at this point, while her husband grew to become one of the greatest of all men that have ever lived. At the end of 12 years, Rabbi Akiva returned to his wife, as he had promised. When he came before the shabby old shack, he heard a conversation between his wife and a neighbor who was taunting Rachel for being foolish to wait and slave and suffer and struggle, even though she's the daughter of a trillionaire, for a husband who has left her to go study Torah. You could live in riches and luxury if you're not so foolish, this neighbor taunted her. What was Rachel's reply? I wish he would stay another 12 years at yeshiva to acquire more knowledge. Full of pride and admiration for his great wife, Rabbi Akiva turned around and did what Rachel said. He went back to yeshiva for another 12 years. You haven't seen your husband in 12 years. You don't know what's going on. He leaves, he started off as an ignoramus. He ends up, mastering a little bit of the Torah. And then you tell him, okay, out of here, 12 years, until you become great. He finally comes home after 12 years. He comes home at the exact moment that the neighbor is taunting her. And she says, I wish he'd stay another 12 years. And he says, okay. He doesn't go in and say hi. He just turned right back around and went and learned for another 12 years. 24 years. This woman suffered without a husband. Poor, needy, struggling. When she was the daughter of, again, like a trillionaire. Billionaire, trillionaire. I hope you're starting to understand the woman that we're talking about here. At the conclusion of 24 years, Rabbi Akiva became the most famous of all the living sages. From near and far, the youth of Israel came to study under his direction. Accompanied by 24,000 students, Rabbi Akiva returned home in a triumphant journey from city to city, welcomed everywhere by the highest of nobilities. The masses, rich and poor, turned out when he came home to Jerusalem. Kalba Savua, the father that disowned the daughter, because she married him, also came out to try to get a glimpse of this unbelievable Torah scholar. He didn't know that this was his son-in-law. Rabbi Akiva returned 24 years later at the head of 24,000 disciples. His identity was unknown to his father-in-law, who came to see this famous scholar in the hopes that he could nullify the vow he made that he regretted disowning his only child, his righteous, beautiful daughter. What does Rabbi Akiva say to him? If you had known that your daughter's ignorant husband would be a great Torah scholar, would you have made the vow? He asked in a manner of every authority, seeking to find an opening for the vow maker to express regret. Kalba Savua says to him, if he had known even one chapter, even one law, I wouldn't have made a vow. Meaning, Kalba Savua knew what an ignoramus Rabbi Akiva used to be. Imagine you have this beautiful daughter. She's so righteous. She's so learned. She's so perfect. You're the richest person in Yerushalayim. You're a billionaire. And she wants to marry the servant that is a total and utter ignoramus. You can see why Kalba Savua wanted to do this. Rabbi Akiva then reveals his identity. He annulled the vow. His overjoyed father-in-law kissed his feet and presented him with half of his wealth. His wife also comes out. Suddenly, Rabbi Akiva saw his disciples trying to hold back a woman dressed in ragged clothes. At once, he made his way through the crowd to greet the woman and led her to the chair by his side. If not for this woman, I would be an ignorant shepherd, unable to read the Aleph base. Whatever I owe to her. He also says in the different version, my Torah and your Torah is because of her, meaning she gets all the credit for it. The huge crowd bowed in respect before the woman to whom Rabbi Akiva owed his great scholarship. Now, before the wife came out, she was taunted by that same neighbor who said, how can you go out to this Torah legend dressed in ragged clothes? And what does she say to him? What does she say to this neighbor? She says, hang on a sec. A righteous man understands his beast. The righteous man understands his beast. Like the beast understands its own kind. Okay? That's going to be very important later on. Okay. Kalba Savua's name translates as satiated dog. Why? Whoever came to his house, he was very charitable, left like a dog that was satiated. You ever seen a dog when they're hungry? I mean, they're like... And then afterwards, they just plop down and they're just, they pass out for the rest of the day. Well, that's how he got his name. Kalba, Kalev, comes from the word Kalev, meaning dog. Savua, satiated. Anyone who came to this house was left like a satiated dog. That's how rich he was. And again, another thing to glean from this is she is not mentioned by name. She is either referred to as the daughter of Kalba Savua or the wife of Rabbi Akiva. The Jerusalem Talmud tells a completely different story. Is related about the help Rabbi Akiva's wife rendered to her husband. According to this version, she sold her hair and thus supplied him with the funds for his study. women's hair was a real commodity and could become a source of income for women at the time. But women selling their hair is very common as an ancient motif. Also happens in Eov and Job. She sold her hair in order to assist her husband, and he later rewarded her with a headdress of that Jerusalem of gold, like I said before. The Jerusalem Talmud's version, which tells of the economic assistance of Rabbi Akiva's wife rendered to her husband. It does not involve her husband's long absence from home. In this, it disagrees with the Babylonian Talmud's version. The third version of the story, found in the two editions of the Avos to Rabbi Natan, like I said, rejects the stories of both the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud. It relates how Rabbi Akiva started off as a pauper and an ignoramus, deciding on his own initiative to go and study Torah. He already had an adult son when he began to go to school. While he was learning, he also supported himself economically. The story ends with Rabbi Akiva buying his wife a golden crown. When questioned about the inappropriateness of his actions, he responded by claiming that his wife too had suffered much with me and the Torah. So all three, you got the the Babylonian Talmud, then the Jerusalem Talmud, then the Avos of Rabbi Natan. All have the same exact theme, that Rabbi Akiva's Torah learning was because of the wife. Can you imagine being a woman that everyone wants to marry? You finally found someone you want to marry, and you basically either don't marry him for the 24 years, according to one version, or you marry him and then he's gone for the first 24 years. For what? She didn't say, oh, you know what? Why don't you go to Cappadocia or Babylonia or Persia? Because you have such good skills as a shepherd, you could come back with so much money. No, she gave up all the money. This was the heiress to one of the biggest fortunes of the times. Her father was one of the top 3 wealthiest people in all of Yerushalayim. She gave it all up for love. Not Disney love, she saw a tzaddik. She saw a righteous yid in this ignoramus. He had such good midos. But we don't know anything about his midos. What do we know about him? Rabbi Akiva, he says himself, I hated the Torah scholars. I wish I could bite them like a donkey bites, like breaking bones. She saw something in him that was so holy. Again, she herself was very holy, very beautiful and very holy and very wealthy. That's a wonderful combination, for any single person. I mean, if someone told me right now, all right, Eliakim, when you're ready to date, I've got she's stunningly beautiful. She's the biggest tzedekis that I know. And her father's like one of the top 3 wealthiest people in Jerusalem. Okay, yeah, sounds great to me. What kind of a woman gives up everything, seemingly, to try to bring out like the blossom of this flower that looks like nothing? Okay. Rabbi Akiva and his wife, the term beast doesn't refer to Rachel herself. It refers to a donkey laden with plants that she used to help Rabbi Akiva overcome his embarrassment about starting off his studies at an older age. Okay? Rabbi Akiva lived 120 years. The first 40 years of his life, he was an ignoramus. So when he marries Rachel, he doesn't even know Aleph Bes. I mean, Kalba Savua says this. It's right in the Talmud. He was so ignorant. He did not even know how to read. He didn't even know an Aleph and a Bes. How does she get him to overcome this embarrassment about being 40 and being so ignorant. When Rabbi Akiva was already 40 and illiterate, he decided to begin studying Torah. He was mocked by the younger students and he felt ashamed. His wife had an ingenious plan. To help him overcome this, his wife put mud and grass seeds on the back of their donkey. Once the plant sprouted, she sent Akiva to the marketplace with this unusual beast to fetch supplies like flowers and lentils. People initially laughed and jeered at Akiva that he had a donkey that had like a garden on his back, which was her whole intention, to expose him to public humiliation in a controlled fashion. Eventually, the public mocking subsided as people began to get used to the sight. Rabbi Akiva, no longer deterred by embarrassment, was ready to fully commit to his studies. As it says in Pirkei Avos, an embarrassed person, a shy person, can never be learned. The story highlights Rachel's wisdom and foresight and dedication to one single thing, her husband's spiritual growth. She played the crucial role in the journey of Rabbi Akiva becoming the most powerful, known, important scholar in Jewish history. Imagine the scene that's going on when she poses the question to him, do you want to marry me? I mean, I don't think it took much, like twisting of the arm. He's a shepherd. He's an ignoramus. He's a shepherd for the most wealthy person in Yerushalayim, one of the top 3. The most beautiful girl who's so righteous and is the heiress to all the money says, do you want to marry me? I imagine that scene. Imagine going from like the life of luxury to such a struggle, such poverty, but for such a holy reason. Nowhere here does it say she wanted all the mitzvahs. She knew the value of Torah learning and knew that she'd have an unbelievable, chelik and olam haba. It doesn't say that. She saw the beauty and righteousness in this seeming ignoramus and knew that she could make it blossom. Do you think it's an accident what was the plan? She puts mud and grass seeds on the back of the donkey, right? Imagine this scene. It like parallels the scene here. You've got this weird mix on the back of a donkey. So Rabbi Akiva goes to the market and his donkey is like growing things on his back. That's a weird, but look at the symbolism and the synergy of this. This was a weird relationship. This was not the normal relationship. This is the kind of relationship that literally only happens in like Disney movies. I mean, this is like Cinderella type stuff, only reversed. Rabbi Akiva was like the Cinderella. He's a nothing at this point. He can't even read. Yet this holy, righteous, beautiful, wealthy girl, she sees something special and important. And she gives up everything. What does the Talmud say about when a rich person becomes poor? What do we have to do? In Judaism, giving charity is seen as an act of righteousness and justice, not just benevolence. It's considered a religious obligation, and it is taught that donors benefit from the tzedakah even more than the recipients. One important aspect of giving tzedakah is to do so in a manner that preserves the dignity of the recipient. This means being mindful of the recipient's customary lifestyle and providing assistance that allows them to maintain a sense of normalcy and self-respect. The phrase, give him what he's used to in the text of the Talmud, emphasizes the importance of providing for the needs of the poor in a way that aligns with their prior life experiences and standards, rather than just providing for their minimal needs. The goal is to uplift the individual and help them become self-sufficient, fostering their independence and assuring that they do not fall into a deeper state of need. And essentially, this teaching encourages thoughtful and compassionate giving, prioritizing the well-being and dignity of the recipient. There's a story that's told of the famous rabbi of the Gemara named Rava. He was approached by a beggar who seemed to be different from the others. He was very well-mannered, and a look on his face indicated that poverty was new to him. He had come from a good family, been educated in Torah, and most of his life had lived like a very rich man. Only now his fortune took a turn for the worse. He lost all of his wealth. He became so poor he could barely even have a piece of bread to keep him alive. He says to the great Rava, "Please give me something to eat." Rava says to him, "What are you accustomed to eating?" Meaning, this is a mitzvah that we should support a person in the manner to which he or she has been accustomed to. The man sighed, "To tell you the truth, I used to eat fat chicken and old wine." This is what the Talmud says is for the wealthy. Fat stuffed chicken and old wine. That was something that the wealthy. Rava was surprised. He said, "This man has such expensive taste. It would be hard for him to get a meal. How can he expect others to take care of him if they couldn't even take care of themselves?" This is what Rava says to him. "Perhaps it would have been better if you satisfied yourself with a more modest diet in the past. That way it would be easier for people to help you." The poor man says back to him, "Why would you say that to me? Am I asking for their food? I'm only asking for food for which is God's. Everything belongs to him. He fulfills the need of every person. If he wants, he will give people enough money for the food I need. I'm a broken person now. I cannot eat coarse food because I'm not used to it." Rava marveled at the man's trust in God. Just then, Rava's sister walked in. He hadn't seen her in 13 years. She came to pay a visit, and in her arms, she brought a present for her brother. What do you think she brought? Fat chicken and old wine. Rava says, "This is clearly meant for you." Rava was astounded. This was a clear miracle. He was a simple person. He was by no means a Torah scholar, yet his faith in Hashem was so strong that Hashem performed the miracle to take care of him. There's another story in the Talmud about the great Hillel. Hillel the Great. Everyone knows Hillel, right? A wealthy person became poor, and Hillel had like two servants would like escort the man. One day the two servants were sick. So Hillel the great Hillel, the leader of the Jewish community, he ran and like escorted this man himself because that's what the man was used to. What does this have to do with Rachel? Well, if you can think about it clearly, it has to do everything with Rachel. What was Rachel used to? What was Rabbi Akiva's wife used to? She was used to the top of the top. I'm talking luxury we can't fathom. I'm talking Rothschild type luxury. I'm not talking, my daddy bought me a BMW 3 Series for my birthday. No, I'm talking your daddy brought you a private jet for your birthday, wealthy. And what does she do? She gave it all up. We have to help people in Judaism that because, their mazel turned, they went from very, very wealthy to very, very poor. We have to do everything we can to help this person in the dignity of their lifestyle. Rachel, Rabbi Akiva's wife, she gave it up on her own. It wasn't taken from her. She chose a life of poverty for one reason only, so that her husband could learn Torah because she saw something great in him. Are you starting to get a better appreciation of exactly who Rabbi Akiva's wife is? Look at the lengths we have to go to. Hashem did a miracle that Rava's sister comes for the first time in 13 years just so that this guy could get the chicken and the wine that he's used to. Rabbi Akiva's wife gave it all up on her own. She threw away the key to the inheritance. She didn't care about that. She couldn't have cared less that she had straw in her hair and she was living in a shack and she had to work hard and cut her hair and sell her hair. All she cared about was that her husband would become something that she saw in him that he could. become. So beautiful. Okay. Talking about the wealth, what does it say about our father? The Roman authorities then sent Vespasian, the Caesar, against the Jews. He came and laid siege to Yerushalayim for 3 years. There was at that time in Yerushalayim 3 wealthy people, Nagdimon ben Gurion, ben Kalba Savua, and ben Tzitzis HaKesed. The Gemara explains that their names meant something. Ben Kalba Savua was called this because anyone who entered his house when he was hungry, as a dog, left satiated. How wealthy were these people? These 3 people offered their assistance during the siege of Jerusalem. One said, I will feed the residents with wheat and barley. One said, I will provide the residents with wine, salt, and oil. And one said, I will supply the residents with wood. It said that the 3 of them had enough supplies to feed the entire city of Jerusalem for 22 years. Do you now have a better understanding of what Rabbi Akiva's wife, who, she has no name. Nowhere in the Talmud does it say what her name is. This came much later on. Do you understand the sacrifice that this woman gave for the Torah? Again, she didn't say to him, you know what? Because, there's lots of wealthy people that say, I don't want my daddy's money, I want to make it on my own. She didn't say, Rabbi Akiva, or at the time Akiva, I don't want my daddy's money. I see in you that you could become, a business tycoon. Go to Persia and just ply your trade. I see something magical in you. Go become wealthy. We'll live on our own money. No, she didn't care about any of the money. It meant nothing to her. All she cared about was that her husband, that she saw something, became learned. And she didn't just think, do you think that, again, with the sacrifice comes the expectation. Do you think that she would have just sacrificed 12 years and then another 12 years for him to just become, he's going to come back and just, he'll build his own shul and he'll have 100 congregants? No. She thought that he could become Rabbi Akiva. And he did. And he wouldn't have without her. What's something very interesting that happened to Rabbi Akiva? He became extraordinarily wealthy. Isn't that strange? She basically was willing to give up all of her money, yet he actually becomes extremely, extremely wealthy, and so too does she. The Gemara mentions 6 sources of Rabbi Akiva's wealth. One of them is obviously getting the money from the father. And then there's 5 other things mentioned that gave him wealth. How do we know the world operates? I literally just did a lecture on this, Mida Keneged Mida, that's going up soon. Hashem judges the world measure for measure, right? Mida Keneged Mida. Rabbi Akiva's wife was the essence, the pinnacle of wealth in ancient Jerusalem. She gives it all up for her husband to just learn Torah. And what does Hashem give her? Both. She gets both. Rabbi Akiva becomes extraordinarily wealthy. Forget about he just has half the money of his father-in-law. It lists 5 other things that he got tons of money. So do you see the Mida Keneged Mida here? She gives up everything so that he can become a Torah scholar. Not only does he become a Torah scholar, he gets all the money back and more. That was part of her reward. Did the money matter to her? No, not at all. To give up everything just for Torah? That's literally in the Shema. What do we say in the Shema? With all your heart, all your possessions. For some people, giving up all their possessions is worse than death. She gave it up voluntarily. It wasn't taken from her. This wasn't like a decree on Rosh Hashanah that okay, Kalba Savua is going to lose his money, and I guess the daughter is going to be, blank out of luck too. No, she said, I want to marry this person. He's going to become a great, great righteous Torah scholar. The money is secondary. Father takes it away, comes right back to her. Now, do we know anything about, they have any children? We know that Rabbi Akiva had a son. It's like Maklokis in the Gemara. Did they have a son before he got married, after? We know that he had a daughter. Rabbi Akiva had a daughter. The astrologer said to him, on the day that she enters the bridal chamber, a snake will bite her and she'll die. He was very, very nervous. On the night of her marriage, she removed a brooch and stuck it into the wall. When she pulled it out the following morning, a poisonous snake came, trailing after it. The pin had penetrated the eye of the serpent. Was there anything special that you did yesterday? Rabbi Akiva asked his daughter. A poor man came to our door in the evening. Everyone was busy at the banquet for the wedding. There was no one to attend to him. So I took the portion of food that was given to me and I gave it to him. Rabbi Akiva went out and declared, charity delivers from death. What does it say about children in the marketplace? You're basically hearing the conversations of the parents. Meaning you see a really, really righteous child at the marketplace, probably has really, really righteous parents. Rabbi Akiva's daughter's mazel, she was supposed to die. How did she, bottle usher the decree? How did she, cancel the decree? Charity. What do we say? Charity delivers from death. Rabbi Akiva says it. See again, the story of the mother also coming back to the daughter. Poor person comes to the door, like the poor person with the straw that we know is Eliyahu Navi. And the daughter, she doesn't just say, you know what? Uncle Jerry, he's not going to eat that portion. What does she say? Everyone was busy at the banquet. There was no one to attend to this poor person. So I took the portion of food which was given to me, and I gave it to him. She gave him her own portion. Just like Rabbi Akiva's wife did. Was happy to give up her own portion for the Torah, for holiness, for righteousness, for Kedusha, for sanctity. Very beautiful. Okay. Why Rachel? There's thousands of Jewish names. I know when my wife and I lived with Shalom, when we were pregnant the first time, she had a miscarriage, unfortunately. And I was sitting in the living room, she was sitting in the kitchen, and she said, what are you thinking for names? I said, what's to think about? Something from the Torah. She said, I'm not naming my son Abraham. I said, well, there's a lot more names in Judaism than Abraham. No offense to anyone watching this, Abraham. It's a beautiful name. I said, well, what do you want for a name? She said, an Israeli name. I said, there's no way in Gehenna that we're doing an Israeli name. These little gender-neutral names. And again, if that's your name, no offense, but it's just not my bag. I said, Google biblical names in the Tanakh and just start throwing out names. We'll decide on one. First boy name she picked out. That was the name. And everyone that has met my son, oh, what a fitting name. Whether this was her name or not, this is the name that she's known by, in perpetuity. It's not a machloikis that she's either Rachel or Leah. The name that we all know Rabbi Akiva's wife by, even though it's never mentioned, is Rachel. Why? Sarah, Rivka, Shana, Basheva, Chana. There's lots of Yael. There's a lot of amazing women in Jewish history. Who's Rachel? What was Rabbi Akiva's wife? If you would try to encapsulate her in one word, what would you say that word is? I would say the word is sacrifice, right? Not like, oh, let's bring a sheep and sacrifice it. As in 24 years, no big deal. As long as my husband attains his potential, Diana, it's worth it. I have to live at home. I have to sell my hair. I live in straw. I could have been a billionaire's, heiress, drinking wine on private jets. Sacrifice. I would say sacrifice clearly is the ikar, is the essence of Rabbi Akiva's wife. I don't even think you can come up with any other thing that's even close. She sacrificed everything. Relationship with her father, all of the money, her marriage, all for the Torah. Who's the other person in Jewish history that is known for sacrifice? Ding, ding, ding. What a coinky dink. Rachel Amena, the sister of Leah. Rachel and Leah, Yaakov's beloved wife that he didn't get to marry first. Why? We all know the story. Yaakov goes to Haran. And his mother tells him, go and stay with Lavan until I tell you to come back. And he goes and he's at the well, and there's a big rock on the well, and he's asking the shepherds, hey, what are you guys just sitting around, playing Wordle for? You got work to do. And they say, oh, we can't lift up the rock. It's too heavy. So we're waiting for the other shepherds to come back. Again, shepherds. Rabbi Akiva was a shepherd. Everything is intertwined here, okay? We're waiting for all the shepherds to get back so we can lift up this rock. And then all of a sudden, Yaakov sees Rachel. Beautiful Rachel. What does it say about Rachel? I just did an amazing lecture on Leah and Rachel. You have to go back and watch it. Leah is only described with one thing, and Rachel is only described with one thing. Leah is described as having soft eyes, puffy, because she's always crying, because she didn't want to marry Esav. And Rachel is described as being of beautiful form and of beautiful appearance. The kind of girl that you right swipe, on the dating sites. She's beautiful. Yaakov sees her coming. He literally flicks off the rock with a pinky. This rock that, you needed all the shepherds, which is clearly a miracle in and of itself. And he says, I want to marry you. And Rachel says to him, you should be, wary. My father's a trickster. He will not let, you marry me first before my older sister. So we know that night, Lavan tricks Yaakov, and Yaakov wakes up in the morning. What does it say? Behold, Leah's in the bed. Rachel did not want to see her sister get embarrassed. Again, with the embarrassment part, right? Rabbi Akiva's wife did not want him to be embarrassed, so she does the whole thing with the seed and the mud growing on the back, right? Again, embarrassment comes into play here. And she lets her sister marry her one and only first. She's the one that has the more children. And she keeps it such internally. She never makes her sister feel she stole the real, that she was the real wife. What's the proof of this? Reuven goes out, gets the dudaim, comes back. Rachel says, let me have the dudaim to Leah. And what does Leah say to Rachel? And I come from Leah, and I'm always and every time I read this, Grandma, it's such an awful thing that you said here. It's not enough that you stole my husband. Now you want to steal my son's dudaim? You stole the husband, not the other way around. Rachel lived her whole life. Never, in an argument saying, you want to know the real story? No, Yaakov was supposed to marry me. I'm the one that sacrificed. She didn't say that one time. She's the definition of sacrifice until someone else comes and is also the definition of sacrifice. How great is Rachel Amenu? Mother Rachel. Okay? I've told this story before, but you're going to hear it again because it's so important. The descendants that Rachel sacrificed her burial place for would be passing along the road 1,000 years later. She's not buried in the Ma'as Machpelah, where I used to live in Hebron. She's buried on the road to Beis Lechem. Separately. She's not buried with Yaakov. Leah is buried with Yaakov. She's just on the road, right? However, knowing that she could save her children by advocating for them, she wanted to be buried there. She wanted to not be buried with her husband, who she was supposed to marry first. She wanted to be buried on the road. Self-sacrifice. It didn't matter that these children she was praying for had sinned. She kept praying for the children. Rachel's self-sacrifice generated God's mercy and his promise to return the Jewish people back to their own borders in Israel. This is in Jeremiah. For through Rachel's recognizing the sinning Jews are still Hashem's beloved children, the children were promised a return for their home. What does the Midrash say? This is the Midrash at the beginning of Lamentations, right? Echa, that we just read. The Midrash tells us that Hashem sends the prophet Yirmiyahu to the patriarchs, Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and Moshe, all of whom have left the world, to ask their participation in the mourning and pleading for a better future for the Jewish people. Excuse me. Each advocates for Israel, attempting to appease God by, by asking him to reciprocate for his past good deeds. First goes Abraham. He reminds Hashem of his willingness to have Yitzhak, his only son, sacrificed. In essence, he says to Hashem, when you told me to sacrifice my son, I became like a cruel person. I did not pay attention to my merciful feelings as a father. I put Yitzhak on the altar, tied him down in order to sacrifice him. Why can you not reciprocate by having mercy on your children? Hashem says nothing. He doesn't even respond. Next, Yitzhak comes. He reminds Hashem of his willingness to be sacrificed by his father. He asks Hashem to reciprocate by having compassion and saving the Jewish people. Again, no response. Then Yaakov comes and says, when I came out of Laban's house where I worked for 20 years, I was with my family. We met Esav. Esav wanted to kill me, and I was ready to have myself killed in order to save my children. Please remember my deed, and in turn, be merciful to your children. Nothing. Again, it doesn't say he said no. Hashem just ignores them. No answer. Finally, Moshe comes. You would think that Moshe Rabbeinu would be able to, push the ball over the goal line, right? Wasn't I a loyal shepherd of the Jewish people for 40 years? I led them in the desert, and finally, when they were poised to enter Israel, you told me I was to remain in the desert. I was not allowed to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Please remember my efforts and have mercy on your people. Again, no response. Each of the patriarchs, the three patriarchs, and also Moshe Rabbeinu, argued that Hashem should be merciful and save the Jewish people. Hashem ignored all of them. Then who comes? The Midrash then tells us that in front of Hashem appears Rachel Amenu. She reiterates to him how difficult it was to have participated in the plan of replacing her with Leah under the bridal canopy. Again, Leah, why does she have soft eyes? She's crying a lot because she doesn't want to marry Esav. So if she lets Leah marry Yaakov, who is the assumption that Rachel is going to marry? The wicked Esav. People don't understand the sacrifice. They did a whole lecture on this. You have to go back and watch it. It'll make Rabbi Akiva's wife look even more amazing. Living up to his reputation as a deceitful rogue, Lavan substituted Leah for Rachel on the wedding night. Yaakov and Rachel expected Lavan to attempt such a deception, and they prepared a secret signal between them. Seeing that they were about to substitute her sister, Leah, for her, Rachel confided the sign to her sister so that the sister would not be put to shame. Rachel buries her desire to marry Yaakov and gives the signals to Leah. What's more, Rachel buries her jealousy in order to be able to carry out the plan with the purest of intentions. Rachel says to Hashem, if I, flesh and blood, a mortal, was able to transcend my jealousy and anger, how much more so should you, Hashem, find compassion on your people? The Midrash tells us that as soon as she says this, Hashem responds to Rachel's tears. He promises for her sake that he will ultimately redeem the Jews from their exile. Rachel recalled her own magnanimity to her sister, Leah, when Leah was fraudulently married to Yaakov in place of Rachel. Rachel did not let jealous resentment lead to her protest. Why then should Hashem be so jealous that the Bnei Yisrael were bringing idols into his temple. Hashem accepted the plea and promised that because of her, Bnei Yisrael would be redeemed. As it's written in Yirmiyahu, thus said Hashem, a voice is heard on high, wailing, bitter weeping. Rachel weeps for her children. She refuses to be consoled for her children, for they are gone. Thus says Hashem, restrain your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for this is the reward, for there is reward for your accomplishment, the word of Hashem. And they will return from their enemy's land. There is hope for your future, the word of Hashem, and your children will return to their border. All because of the sacrifice of Rachel. There's another Rachel who made also potentially an even bigger sacrifice. That is the wife of Rabbi Akiva, who gave it all up. Riches, the parties at the Hamptons, the best clothes. What does Rabbi Akiva give her? He gives her a pendant, like that adorns the hair, a Jerusalem of gold, sort of similar to the promise that Hashem made to Mother Rachel, right? Your children will come back. There'll be a temple. There'll be a redemption. There'll be a geula. Rabbi Akiva is basically telling her the same exact thing by giving her this. You gave up everything, and look what you're getting back. You now share in all of my Torah learning. You probably get even more of the credit, according to basically every, I hope that my sponsors get way more credit than I do, to be honest, because all of this is happening because of them. I mean, clearly I'm getting a lot of credit. I mean, I'm teaching Torah. That's the highest thing that you can do. But Yisvulun is mentioned before Yisachar. Rabbi Akiva comes back. He gives his wife one thing. This is like unanimous in all the, there's different versions of the story, but all agree the same thing. Rabbi Akiva becomes extraordinarily wealthy, and he gives his wife a Jerusalem of gold. What else do we know about Rabbi Akiva? He became the teacher and the mentor of 24,000 students. I just mentioned that before, right? But as the Gemara in Yevamos mentions, every single one of them died between Pesach and Shavuos. 24,000 students dead. As the Talmud puts it, the world was desolate, the human tragedy devastating, the loss to the world unimaginable. Imagine you have 24,000 students. You're the biggest rabbi that's ever lived. Imagine what we lost. Why is that time period of the Omer a mourning period? And we don't shave, we don't listen to music, because of the loss of the students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva personally witnessed the entire life work basically going down the drain. All of the training of the greatest minds of the next generation were lost to Rabbi Akiva. Did Rabbi Akiva just give up, waste away the years like a Steely Dan song? No. He picked himself up, and started again. As the Talmud continues, he found 5 new students. 5 that replaced the 24,000. Rather than attempting to amass a massive number of students, he focused on 5 precious souls. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students in the land that stretched from Givat to Antiparis. And they all died in one period because they did not treat each other with respect. And the world was desolate on Torah until Rabbi Akiva came to the rabbis in the south and he taught Torah to them. The 5 disciples were Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. These are the ones that upheld the study of Torah at the time. Although Rabbi Akiva's previous students did not survive, his later students were able to transmit the entire Torah to the future generations. Every single drop of Torah that we have right now is basically from Rabbi Akiva and his 5 students. Almost everything. Who is Rabbi Meir? Rabbi Meir is known as the narrator of the Mishnah. Stam Mishnah is from Rabbi Meir. Also, the Geula comes through Rabbi Meir by saying that we are always Hashem's children. There's Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eli. He's the narrator of the Sifra. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, the Zohar, and the Sifri. Rav Yossi ben Chalafta. The Babylonian Talmud says that in a dispute, Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta is always the halacha follows him. And Rav Elazar ben Shemua, Rav Abba Richa says he's the most excellent among the sages. Rabbi Akiva lost 24,000 students. Pairs of 12,000. 24,000 students. Can you imagine your whole life's work, what you sacrificed 12 years for, just like up in smoke? But imagine what the wife thought. Imagine what Rachel, she gives up her whole life for Rabbi Akiva to go to yeshiva, to become Rabbi Akiva. 24 years. He not only ascends himself, he has 24,000 Talmidim. We know about 5 of them, right? We know about the 5 new ones. Can you imagine the amount of Torah and the amount of that we lost because of this? Did Rabbi Akiva sulk and just say, you know what, I'm going to go back to being a shepherd, it's not worth it? Who do you think was there the whole time, giving him consolation and hope and spurring him on? I mean, what do you think she's thinking? Gosh, he's away for 24 years. Comes back with 24,000 students and they all die? Why did I do this? Why did I give it all up? What a stupid mistake I made. Gosh, I could have married, the richest guy, just the prince. Could have married anybody. Why did I stick it all out? Now I have nothing. No. It doesn't say that she encouraged them, but I'm assuming we can, read between the lines here. Rabbi Akiva doesn't give up. He dusts himself up, and he created 5 students that eclipse these 24,000. I mean, for anyone out there that's religious, you can't do anything in the Talmud without knowing Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Elazar. They're part and parcel of everything that is Judaism. Imagine the dynamic between this princess and this lowly shepherd that grew and built into what we see today. I mean, our Judaism today is from Rabbi Akiva. All the halachas in the Talmud, they're all basically from Rabbi Akiva, unless it says otherwise, and that's pretty rare. He was a illiterate ignoramus that hated the Torah at age 40, and then something changed, and that something was a remarkable woman. That now what? Well, if Malka Rus is getting, let's see, we're at 1 hour and 32 minutes now. So let's just say it's 60,000 an hour, according to the Chafetz Chaim, and there's many rabbis that say it's even more. So we're now at about 92,000 mitzvahs for this lecture. Who's going to get the 92,000 mitzvahs that I just gave for giving the lecture? Malka Rus. I'm sure Malka Rus is going to watch this, clearly. That's another 92,000. Every other person that's going to watch this lecture is going to get 92,000 mitzvahs that are going to shoot right to Malka Rus's account. Well, who else is going to get the mitzvahs here? Everything we learn here is in the Talmud. The entire Talmud is basically from Rabbi Akiva. Who spurred Rabbi Akiva on to be the Rabbi Akiva that we know of today? His wife. His wife. So every single drop of Torah learning from now until the end of time, every single drop is going to go to one woman more than probably any other. In fact, for sure more than any other. And that is the non-named wife of Rabbi Akiva, who we now know the name was attached to her, Rachel, but it wasn't an accident. You could have attached tens of thousands of names. They chose the name that best embodies who Rabbi Akiva's wife was. She was just like Rachel Amenu, the paradigm, the archetype of sacrifice. Rachel Amenu sacrificed just a perfect marriage with a perfect tzaddik that she was destined to marry because she did not want to embarrass her sister, and she kept it quiet. Nothing broke her. She was the strong, silent type. So too Rabbi Akiva's wife. No amount of taunting, no amount of anger from the father could get her to budge from something that she knew would produce fruit. And that fruit was the Torah learning and genius and righteousness and holiness and sanctity that became Rabbi Akiva. But there is no Rabbi Akiva without his wife. Therefore, if we're going to say that the greatest person of all time is Rabbi Akiva, and you ask many rabbis, they'll say that. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was given a lot of the Torah as a gift on Mount Sinai, right? It was a gift given to him by Hashem. Rabbi Akiva was an ignoramus, illiterate that just battled and fought for the next 80 years of his life to become the Rabbi Akiva that we know today. And what's the proof that Moshe Rabbeinu is not even on the level of Rabbi Akiva? Moshe Rabbeinu comes up to Shemaim and he sees Hashem tying crowns on the letters. If you look at a Sefer Torah, you open up a Torah, like the actual Torah scroll that you see in a shul, you'll see crowns on some of the letters, like a Shin, Gimel, right? You'll see the crowns. Moshe Rabbeinu asks Hashem, why are these crowns here? And he says, sometime down the road, there will be a rabbi, Akiva ben Yosef, who'll be able to glean thousands and thousands and thousands of halachas and just from these letters. He says to Hashem, show him to me. Hashem, brings him into the future, lets him sit in the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva. He's sitting multiple rows back, and he sees Rabbi Akiva explaining these crowns. Moshe Rabbeinu has no clue what he's talking about. He gets very disenchanted. But then he hears Rabbi Akiva say, this is the halacha taught to us by Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. And he gets happy. Then he says to Hashem, show me the outcome of Rabbi Akiva. What is Moshe Rabbeinu shown? He was shown the death of Rabbi Akiva, the most gruesome death maybe in Jewish history. And he says, is this the reward for this great man, the greatest man? Hashem says to him, silence, this is my decree. Moshe Rabbeinu was in awe of Rabbi Akiva and his wisdom. There's no such thing as Rabbi Akiva or his wisdom without the guy behind the guy. Not in this case. It was the woman behind the guy. And that woman was the wife of Rabbi Akiva, who is unnamed in every single source until hundreds of years later, the Avos of Rabbi Nassan comes and says, her name is Rachel. And why was her name Rachel? Because she is the same righteous tzedekis like our mother Rachel. If the goal of the world is Torah learning, if the biggest mitzvah that we get is from Torah learning, I keep telling every single viewer over and over again, sponsoring IDF barbecues is nice. It's very nice. It pales in comparison to sponsoring Torah. Hashem created a cheat code for the world. And it's right in the Torah. Nothing brings more value or benefit to the world and to yourself than Torah learning. If almost every drop of Torah learned today, the Talmud and everything, all comes from Rabbi Akiva and his 5 students, then who's at the top of that pyramid? His wife. They made it all possible. This is what I'm trying to instill in every single person viewing this. Some people are getting it, like Malka Rus, like my dear friend Lisa, who sponsored now 43 lectures. Whoever sponsors or is responsible for the Torah gets equal, if not more, than the one that is actually learning it or teaching it. And there is no better example that we will ever get from this than the most righteous woman that ever lived, and that is Rabbi Akiva's wife, who gave it all up strictly for the Torah. Wishing everybody a wonderful, wonderful day.